Hey everyone, welcome to a new Gmat Club Saturday session. Hope you all enjoyed the session with Gmat Ninja yesterday. Thanks so much for coming back. I'm here with Olga today, and she is in Germany right now. She recently did the Gmat at the test center, unlike me, where my test center was an upstairs bedroom. And she's here to talk about some of her experiences. So for most of you who don't know me, I'm Shovik. I'm a recent alum from the University of Michigan Ross School of Business. Just moved to Seattle to start working at a big tech company. Olga, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself before I throw you a ton of questions?
Great, thank you very much. Hi everybody, thanks for joining. My name is Olga. I'm originally from Russia, and since 2 years I have been living and working in Germany. And around February, I decided that maybe the next right step in my career would be pursuing an MBA. And the first step to be done is actually taking a GMAT. So I took around 3 months of preparation, and I was actually lucky, I think, because in Germany, the test centers started to open on the 15th of May. So I could already enroll for the test on the 22nd of May. I took the test and I scored 730, and I'm really happy about this result, and I'm happy to share my hints with you today.
That was a great score, by the way. I always have this feeling like, what would the score be if you were taking the test online? But I guess we'll never find out. But tell me about that a little bit more. You mentioned you sort of prepped for three months. Is that right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So tell me about that journey. Like when you started preparing for the GMAT, where did you first go? What was some of the first weeks of your prep like?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, like my really first action was just to Google Gmat preparation, and then I basically took the first 10 links. I think the first one is actually Gmat Club, so this is how I got introduced to your amazing
community. Our SEO is working well. Thank you for confirming.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I just went through different preparation sources. You know, there are a lot of them. There is Kaplan. There is actually the official Gmat website. And I took a look into all of them, and I actually even took this free week. You know, they normally offer something for free or free test, and I tried to understand what dashboard, what design appeals to me, to find out what software or what company I would like to work with potentially.
Right. So you took the first week just like pure research, right?
Yes.
Did you take a practice test?
Yeah, actually, and on one of the sources, I also read about the strategy. You know, there are some really big articles also on the Gmat Club. There are big articles, hey, what's the best preparation strategy? And pretty much every text is mentioning that you have to take a test to get understanding of your baseline. And this is what I did. I thought before I even try to understand the structure of the test, I'll take a test, just random, to test how much I remember from the school still or from undergrad studies. And I did that. My baseline score was, if I'm not mistaken, 630.
Right. That's a good score to start with. I mean, I remember when I took the GMAT for the first time, I took Manhattan for my first practice test. It was very similar, I think it was around like 650. But which practice test did you start off with?
With the official one. I really tried a lot of them, and basically they differ through the analytics they offer when they analyze your results. I really liked some of the companies which really give you like a lot of insights, how much time you spend on which question. But in the end, I think the most transparent one, and the one which gives quite a good understanding of what potentially can be your final score, I think this is the official Gmat test. Yeah.
Awesome. So let's say you've spent the first week on just pure research, right? You went to all the Google links and started looking at different companies, and then you took a practice test. Tell me about the first month. How did that change? How did you sort of zero in on what strategy to use for the test?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great question. I think I try to understand, what am I? Am I good at verbal? Am I good at quant? And because sometimes when you read or you listen to webinars of other people and you see like, wow, guys are scoring 780. Am I so bad? am I still that? You get overwhelmed with this. And I really just try to understand where I'm currently standing. What really changed over the first weeks, I understood that I'm okay. And I saw many people massively changing their scores toward the final test. And I just got reassured, yeah, I can do this, increasing by 100 scores, which I defined for me as an aim because I thought, okay, median score for these top schools is 730. Let's do just that and focus on the rest of my application.
Awesome.
And then I understood, okay, my quant must be improved probably or predominantly regarding the pacing. I was quite good in the content, but pacing was really my big issue. Right. And then on the verbal part, I saw I needed to understand what's the real structure, what the authors try to entice you with, what traps are they building. And I thought as soon as I learned those traps while studying the content, I will be able to tackle the test.
Those are good first steps for sure. And also, like, just to something that you mentioned, it's very easy to get overwhelmed, right? Like when you look at Gmat Club, we have a forum called Shared Gmat Experiences, right? And I remember going to that thread and I was like, oh, like the least scored here is like a 740 and everything else is like 750, 760. Who are these people? But it's also important to like keep things in perspectives because not everybody will share their score, like if it's not very good, there's a lot of confirmation bias there. So awesome. So tell me a little bit more about your quant prep. You mentioned that you got a 730. So 3 questions coming for you, like so baked into one. So what was your quant score on your GMAT, right? What was the quant score that you started with on your baseline? And how did you manage to, increase it?
Mm-hmm. So my final score was 49 points.
Awesome.
And you know what? That's really funny. My very initial test, I scored 48. After that, when I took some further tests, I found out it was pretty random what I received in the score. So I think that's really important to do several tests, not only to track your progress, but also to identify what's your real like baseline, what's your real level of the current preparation, and what are those small outliners which definitely have to do something with luck. So as soon as I took second test, just to really understand my baseline, I had around 43. So I measure myself by saying, hey, I increased my score by 6 points in the quant part.
That is awesome. So tell me some of your quant strategies. Did you take a course? How did you prep? Did you look at any of the stuff on Gmat Club, anywhere else? Tell me more about some of those strategies.
Yeah, I think really important part is to build your own study program. And for me, entertainment and, a little bit of gamification was important part of it because you really can be overwhelmed with studies. And that's a risk. Then you just dive into studies and then there is nothing else existing. And I don't know, there are many people who are even ending up with burnout. So it was important for me to make like different building blocks. I had lectures, so videos from Magoosh on the app. Was really amazing. Wherever I was taking a public transport, I could watch them, and I really enjoyed the way how they present information. And they didn't only show the formulas, which might be helpful. They explained where those formulas are coming from. And the second part was, of course, the official guide. I really tracked all my performance. I tried to analyze why I'm doing certain mistakes. So this is really about training and getting the content. And then the third thing I want to show you, that's I actually call it nerd book. Yes. Wow. I wrote down all the stuff which was not obvious to me. Something like that, this prime numbers that like 2 is actually a prime number, or that squares always have I don't remember it anymore. Squares always have an uneven number of factors. So such really not obvious stuff, which eventually can save you a lot of time, especially on upper level questions. I just wrote it down part by part. So I created my own Gmat book It's not for sale, sorry. And this helped me in the final weeks to just focus on reviewing the content without needing to deep dive into these huge books.
Yeah. I'm going to add to something that you mentioned, that 2 is a prime number. That is something, not just that, like the GMAT has this list of weird things that they really like to test you on. Like one of the things that I always try to check, if it's an integer, I cannot test cases with like fractions, and also 0 is both even and odd. 0 is even. And squares will always have an odd number of factors. Those things are super important. So I'm glad you used some Post-it notes for some of that. So it seems like organization was a big thing for you, right? I think I definitely struggle with that. So was that a diary with Post-its? Did you do anything else? Did you maintain like a fancy error log on Excel, or how was your error log like?
True that. So that's important for me. I'm that type of a person. So I'm not telling that this strategy works for everyone. I think in the first weeks, you also should understand what kind of person, what kind of student you are. Do you need this entertainment? Do you need structure? Do you need like 4-6 months of preparation, or you're rather a sprinter? I'm rather a sprinter. I know in 1 year I would lose the confidence and the interest in the test. And yes, I had an Excel backlog, of course, for those tasks, for tests which I was solving using the computer. And also I can show you, guys, I brought really everything.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So this is also a nice book. I'm not getting any commission for the advertisement, but I just wanted to show you how I really work. So those questions which I found complicated, I just marked them and I reviewed them after a certain time or after I mastered certain content. This was crucial for me.
Awesome. Let's move on to, by the way, thank you so much for bringing those things here. Like really helps me understand some of your mindset and what you went through. Before we move to verbal, just wanted to mention something that I think is true, and you mentioned it, that I feel like sometimes a focused prep for a few months is a lot better than like a very dragged on prep. I've seen people on the forums that take the GMAT, like years after years. They spend like 2-3 years on the prep. And I think it has some benefits. Of course, it's more time, but it also sometimes you hit a wall, and the more time you spend, it actually takes away from you. So I'm really glad you sort of confirm my suspicion. So let's move on to verbal, because you mentioned that for verbal, one thing that you really wanted to be careful of is like the sentence structure and like basic tricks and traps. Tell me more about your verbal prep. What was your, again, same questions. What was your score in the baseline? What was your final score? And what did you do to get from A to B?
My baseline score was 34, if I'm not mistaken, and my final score was 41. Before I took the actual GMAT in the final weeks, my tests have shown around 38. So I really did this jump during the test. I'm happy about it. I was already preparing for 38, but then I saw 41 and I thought, yeah, that's great. I think that's a lot about understanding what are the common traps. So I really loved those books on critical reasoning, which explain you not what the right answer is, but what the wrong answers are.
Right.
It was really helpful to understand. Same with reading comprehension, understanding what they try to, like what traps are they building for you was important and helped me to improve my score. I also diligently tracked, okay, here's my percentage rate of success for this part and this part. And I saw my weak part used to be sentence correction. After I mastered the content, I think it was Manhattan 2. This was like really massively reduced. In the end, sentence correction was my like really worst part.
Yeah.
I think main strategy is, just last thing to add up, is really to get transparent what are your weaknesses and strengths, and during the test, just to say, hey, I'm just skipping this question. For example, sentence correction sometimes can really steal 4 minutes from you during the test.
Right.
And there cannot be any wonder, all of a sudden you will score 50 points at verbal if you haven't scored this during the preparation. So I think you really need to relax a little bit during the test and say, hey, this I skip because I know towards the end of the test there will be easier questions and I better get them. Right.
No, that's true. I felt that from my experience, sentence correction is where you have the chance to improve the most, because it's sort of, you get to learn new stuff, but you also, like, it's very rule based sometimes, as opposed to like critical reasoning and reading comprehension. It takes a lot longer to improve, but I'm glad it worked out for you.
So maybe one thing to add up, if I may, on the sentence correction. As a non-native speaker, I found it incredibly complicated to learn all these idioms. Yeah. And the thing is, when you read the options, then in the answer options, you feel humiliated, like, oh my God, did I say this incorrectly for my whole life? That's really dangerous. So I think it's important not to overdo on sentence correction and not try to put all this content in your head. For me, I'm rather a short memory person. To be honest, what I did, I mastered sentence correction during the last week. Right. Many people say do not prepare at all during the last week. I actually really learned sentence correction during this week, used it for the test, scored really well, and it might be that I have forgotten some of stuff, but let's see.
Do you find yourself now that you correct other people's sentences, or you always think to yourself, this won't really work on the Gmat?
Yes, it is. That's super dangerous, because I wasn't still communicating at my work that I'm doing the Gmat preparation, but then when we were building some slides, I was like, here, especially no commas. Normally people really don't know how you put commas as non-natives, and I was like, actually, the commas shouldn't be there. That's dangerous. I think you better shouldn't do this to non-native speakers. But yes, I'm happy about my English level after the Gmat. I'm so grateful. I haven't had this increase in the English level since a while, because I haven't studied. I'm using the language, and sentence correction helped me in this, definitely.
Awesome. So I want to move to your test day experience, but I'm looking at a lot of questions that are coming in. We have about like 80 people watching, so pretty cool. Okay, so keep your questions. We'll definitely get to them at the end, right? So, but we will spend about 15 minutes for the questions. So keep asking the questions. By the way, Olga, I recently got a haircut, and I see a lot of people commenting about my haircut and the Gmat short. So thanks for that.
I also want to short.
Let's move to the test day experience. You were preparing for the test almost during the whole quarantine situation, right? Mm-hmm. Did you start preparing the test thinking that, hey, you know what, I might have to take this test online? I think the online announcement, went up in maybe March or end of March. So what was that about, and how did you know that you can still take the test on the test center?
Yeah, when I started preparation, it was still not that bad, so there was no idea. I didn't have any idea about the online version, and then I saw it arriving. I really tried to just, take a certain distance to that.
Yeah.
The stress going around, and I need to prepare. I have this 3 months, and I shouldn't freak out before actually arriving to this final point.
Right.
I started to investigate what are the conditions of the Gmat Online and whether the test centers are opening in the beginning of May. So after 2 months of, let's say, calm preparation, I think this is crucial. Guys, really don't get irritated by anything going on beyond these walls. You are the big ship. The bigger you are, the less of importance is this how big the waves are.
Yeah, no, that's totally true. So tell me more about the test day. What mask did you use?
Just normal medical mask. I thought it's not a big difference, and I didn't want to experiment with that, to add another variable through the whole story. So I just took a simple mask.
Awesome. So tell me more about that test day experience. So you mentioned you have taken practice tests before. How many practice tests did you do before going for the test day? And then was your final score sort of in line with your last practice test?
Yes, my final score was in line. I scored in the last weeks. I used to score in around 710, 730. I even scored it once. So I found it really a very good prediction. So the official tests, they were very good predictors. Of what I finally scored. Some other tests of other companies were also amazing in terms of what analytics they provide you, but not all of them were precise, let's say. And it's dangerous if you get a really way too much or like too complicated quant.
Yeah.
You feel overwhelmed, like, oh, what's wrong? I now got, I don't know, 660 or like way below you normally score.
Right.
That's dangerous. So really always, there is a piece of, there is some salt in all, in other providers, but I really focused on the official Gmat. I bought an additional pack of the tests.
Right.
And together, official Gmat plus other providers, I took around 15 tests.
Wow.
This is not many, but let me explain. Pacing was my issue. And I think this is a good way to train and to improve in terms of pacing, actually taking the tests. Not only mastering the content, but taking the tests and develop the strategy, what you actually must skip, as I explained before. Awesome. But that is not all medicine for everyone.
Yeah, no, I think you're totally right. And I think you're reinforcing this again and again that, hey, look, these are the strategies that worked for me. It may not work for you, but it might be helpful to know. So try it out, see if it works. So like the official test day, sometimes is a bit different. Like you're in a new room and you have other people. Was your final test day experience any different? One thing, I'll just give you an example. One thing that this is my first test, so this is way back in 2014 or 13. Wow, I'm old. When I was taking my practice tests, I always felt I had a lot of time left in my quant, right? So I would finish the quant section in maybe like 60 minutes. This was back when, believe it or not, I'm sure you don't know this, Olga, but quant used to have more questions. They had 37 questions back in the day, and used to get like 75 minutes or something like that. And I would, finish my test in like 60 minutes, and I would have 15 minutes where I would just stare at the screen. On my test day, I was short of time in quant. I had to like almost guess one question and move on. And I was like, what? This never happened. Did any of those surprises happen to you?
There were some surprises, both positive and negative ones. I'll start with the positive ones. It actually was really calm, and I'm grateful to the test administrators. They created a really, really good atmosphere despite of what's going on beyond the walls.
Yeah.
The negative side of it was indeed also pacing, but it didn't turn out that bad because just guys, think about your patterns of behavior during schooling time. And when I had my undergrad, I really used to like check or like overproof and read again and again before I submit my test or exam whatsoever. So I knew during the test, I'm getting really overcautious. Because I anyway had already the spacing issue, I knew this shouldn't be the case. So I was prepared for my unexpected behavior, and I was ready to tackle it straight away. This worked really nicely.
Awesome. So great test day experiences, good learnings. Thank you for that. What's next for you? What are you doing now? What are you going to do with your awesome Gmat score?
So I really, the first thing I've done after I scored, I got my final result. I posted the debrief on the Gmat Club as a kind of a way to say thank you guys, even though I was not that active in the forum. So thank you again. And then I was analyzing how good my result is for the schools again. And this is also dangerous because you will see some people who scored that result, and then they say, hey, maybe I need to rescore. We take the test to get another score, to get a higher score. I really had 5 minutes of doubt whether I should do this, but then I thought, I think really preparing a really rounded application, it's much more important. That's my feeling. So I focused on my actual application. I'm working with my recommender to brief, or with 2 recommenders to brief them about what I want them to present in their recommendations. And also I'm doing in parallel, not with that high speed, the TOEFL preparation. I will need to take a TOEFL test.
Yes, so I had to take the TOEFL too, but it was strange because my undergrad was completely in English. So all the schools were fine except for one school in California. And for that one school, I had to take the TOEFL, the TOEFL is a really annoying test. It's like super long. It's very easy, but it's just very long. But it's really good that you're starting early. And, for what it's worth, I'm someone who has been on Gmat Club for at least like the last 6-7 years now. I started hanging out on Gmat Club when I was at college or right after college. So I started this journey super young. Anyway, so I've seen a lot of people come and go, right? I've seen a lot of people starting to prep for the GMAT and then going to school and then graduating, getting jobs and whatever. I can tell you that if anyone tells you with your score that you need to retake, that person has no idea what they're talking about. I think your score is amazing, and I think you'll be able to get into any school you want, regardless of whether your score is a 730 or a 750. Especially you, like you're very international, you're very diverse. I think you'll be fine. Would love to learn more about your application experience as you go through them, right? So please keep me posted. But I'm going to take some questions now, right? So getting a lot of questions about AWA, right? So I think this is like the third time. So this is the one, second one, third one. So a lot about AWA. Tell me more about AWA. Did you prep anything for AWA at all, or what did you do?
So this topic, AWA, was covered in those Magoosh lectures, so I had the idea what it is about, and also from those strategies I read, I understood that it might be enough just to prepare for this briefly during the last weeks, last week even. I did that. This is one thing about it, and then in fact, as soon as you are pretty good at the critical reasoning, you will be able to master AWA, because this is exactly about critical reasoning. You need to attack the argument of other person. Therefore, I think really short time of preparation is enough. What is important to train, I think, is really speed. During the actual test, I found out that I was also a little bit running out of time. I didn't have time to do the proofreading.
Yeah.
But I scored 5.0. I'm quite satisfied with the result, and that's enough, I think.
Awesome. So getting a question about how to get the Gmat Club shirt. It's exclusive. Sorry.
I would like to get one too.
I will definitely send it to you, Olga. So where can we take the practice test from? So Olga, you mentioned that you took the tests only from the Gmat Prep official. Did you take any other practice tests?
Pretty much everything, like Kaplan, Veritas, what else is there? Economist. Almost all of them have one test for free. It was important for me to understand whether I find the way these companies are presenting the content really unique, in order to understand whether I want to buy it, whether I want to pay something for it.
Yeah. And,
I think it's nice just to also to change the design you have in front of your eyes.
Right.
To prepare for the stress, for anything new.
Awesome. So somebody is saying you're very organized because he is just randomly solving all questions available on Gmat Club. So I think being organized is super important, as Olga sort of demonstrated, but you can also do questions on Gmat Club and use the timer, right? So that will automatically add the questions to your workbook. You can come back and review them later. Awesome. So how long was your prep time? Olga, you mentioned 3 months, but let me try to flip the question. Do you think if you were prepping for maybe 5 months, your score would be more?
My score would have been higher, probably, maybe 20 points, but then I would have lost 2 months of preparing the application, and I'm sure this would have had a negative effect on the application.
Awesome. No, that was the answer I was hoping you would say, because it's important to time box some of these processes. Like, sure, I mean, if you want to get a GMAT 800, you can prepare for all your life. I think Gmat Ninja has an 800, but he's also like a tutor. So I think it's important to time box your processes. Awesome. So question, did you just use official questions for quant and verbal for your prep?
Not only. So as I said, tests themselves are also a good way to prepare. And on the verbal side, I also used the Power Score book, which combines theory and practice. And at some point, I arrived to the point when I wanted more of advanced content. And I used the Manhattan Advanced Quant and also questions from the Gmat Club, because there is a way you can see the questions of a higher level. For the 700 and more, 700 plus, I used to open that and just, read what people write and where do people make mistakes. This I also found quite amusing, I must say, to create the understanding for me, okay, this strategy I must avoid, or this traps I must avoid.
Awesome. Did you do any of Buñuel's quant questions at all on the forum?
Some of them, definitely. I tried to use everything to entertain myself, not to get bored with the Gmat.
Yeah. Awesome. Questions for you about pacing. So what will be your best recommendation to increase the pace? You mentioned you had some pacing troubles, especially for RC questions. Sometimes it takes 5 to 6 minutes to read the passage.
Yes. So general strategy is really to train, and not only to train like only the tests, just rest assured, as soon as you master the content, your speed will increase.
Right.
So that's the first thing to do. After the content is mastered, then do more tests, focus on real testing issues. Regarding the reading comprehension, what was essential for me, and I think I don't have any mistakes in reading comprehension in the actual test, is to read the text and always write the summary myself. This even increased my reading time to, I think, 6 to 7 minutes.
Right.
So you're still good, Kamran.
Yeah.
But for that, I was able to answer the questions really fast because I always had the answer ready on my whiteboard.
That's good advice, because I think you can try to read the passage in 2 minutes, but what's the point if you get a question and constantly have to go back to the passage and you end up taking a lot longer? By the way, Gmat Ninja is doing an RC video series on YouTube. Yesterday was our first one. The next one is on Monday. So just make sure you tune in for those. So we will have more RC strategy. Okay, so we'll take this question right on the screen, but let me tell you a little bit of background, because I was definitely one of the victims to this mindset. So in my, I think by the way, Olga, I've taken the Gmat like 5 times now, right? So I've only taken the Gmat twice for my own purposes. The rest of the times was just for fun. So one of the things that happened to me in my second attempt, right? So I was taking the quant and my application was due in like 2 months. So I was under a lot of pressure. And so that's the Gmat where I scored a 760. I think my quant score was 50. And I realized that in my enhanced score report, I had only missed 1 quant question. And that's it. I missed 1 quant question, but I still didn't get a Q51, whatever. Anyway, so the point is that I was testing at a pretty high level in quant, right? I remember distinctly, I think it was question number 17 or 18, where I had the dumbest, the most easiest question I've ever seen. The only thing that the question needed was the expansion of a plus b squared, right? And I was like, okay, this is a really easy question, right? There is no way this question is at a good level. That must mean that I am awful and I am doing really, really poorly in this test, right? And I ended up taking like 2 minutes checking my answer like 17 times. So anyway, so the question here is, do you often, while you're taking the test, do you often think about whether you're doing well or whether you're not doing well?
I used to do this during the preparation, but
Right.
I finally arrived at the test day with the thought, this really doesn't matter, this doesn't show anything. Because the thing is, sometimes you're not even able to identify whether that's actually an easy question or a hard question. Because it may seem like a hard question, but in fact there is just some small piece of information. If you learn it, and then you are able to get the correct answer. So really, don't waste time on that. Don't reflect on the questions which you already took.
Yeah.
This is a waste of time. The only moment you will realize whether you were good is when you see the result, not during the test. But maybe one thing to add up, I did have this moment when I realized I'm not really performing well. I didn't feel that confident anymore. It was between 12th and 16th question during the test.
You're right.
It was really stressful, and I started to internally criticize myself. Wow, now you're losing it. I took the advice. I think that's book number 0 in this Manhattan Big Set.
Yeah.
If you are arriving and if you are having this stressful moment during the exam, take 30 seconds to relax. I did that. I closed my eyes. I started to breathe deeply in and out, came back, and then continued.
I'm glad you did that. I think it's definitely helpful, and people think like, well, 30 seconds, that's a lot of time, but it's really not. And I think if that 30 seconds make you more focused for the rest of the test, it is totally worth it. I would be very afraid that if I close my eyes for 30 seconds, I'd just fall asleep. But but overall, okay. Question for you: you were preparing for the test while working full time, right? So, what was your schedule like? Like, how many hours on the day you would prep? Did you have a specific time of the day where you would prep? How did you go about that?
So I used to train after, or like really to do the tests, or to train with the questions after the workday. I took some pause, let's say after 6 p.m., maybe 1 or 2 hours, and I'm really a night person.
Yeah.
So I try to not like put too much stress on me during the workday, so that I'm still rather fit at 8 p.m. And the time felt really comfortable for me. Of course, there are persons who love to study in the morning. Then do this before your workday, or start your workday 1 hour later if your schedule allows that. And of course, also weekend. But I must mention, I always try to accommodate enough time for not doing any exercise. Normally it was Sunday, I would go for a walk, or I took a run, and this helped me to stay really alive during this time.
Right. That's awesome. So what time of the day was your final test?
Oh, this was so bad. It was 8 a.m.
Oh my God. Okay.
Yeah, my perfect time is actually 8 p.m.
Right.
But unfortunately, this was the only free slot, so I had to take it in order not to postpone my exam. And I took the advice that in the last week, you need to try to wake up earlier in order for your brain to be ready to work at this time of the day. It was really bad advice, guys, for me, because it only resulted in the fact that I was so tired. My tiredness accumulated over this week. By the way, I took last week before this, I forgot to mention, last week before the test, I took a vacation week. That's important.
Good call.
Yeah. So I really I think I didn't sleep enough. This was hard. I'm a very anxious person. It was hard to fall asleep. And at the test day, I realized I'm so tired. It was 6 a.m. and I was so tired. And I thought, I cannot start with the quant section. My initial plan was to start with quant, with a fresh mind, very fast. Everything is good. No, I felt too sleepy, and I thought, okay, I first need to wake up. And I thought a nice way to wake up is to take an AWA. I took this. So in the last moment, I changed the order. I think it was the right decision.
Right. By the way, I remember, I'm not sure if you know who BB is on the forum. So on my second test, I was speaking to him right the night before. And I was like, I mean, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, but we'll see. And one of the things that he said was, it's very common to not get a lot of sleep the night before because you'll be stressed out, you'll probably overthink, and you'll be anxious. But know that it's common. I think if you, let's say, I mean, I function very well with 6 hours of sleep. That's my main time. But I think I got only like 4 hours. And I could be bummed about it. Oh, I only got 4 hours and I'm not going to be in my best mental capacity. Or I could just say, you know what? It is what it is. I just slept for 4 hours. I'm going to force myself to be alert. And I think that worked for me. Okay, so I'm taking one more question. How much time do you think we need to invest if you have 2 months? So I can go first, Olga. I think, look, it doesn't matter if you have 2 months or 6 months. It's a question of how much time you need to get to your score. So, like as Olga mentioned, see where you need help with. See the questions that you're getting wrong, and try to use that time efficiently. So one thing that I'd like to do is, if you're making the same mistakes, then you're not learning efficiently. So one thing that I used to do was, let's say I did a question on the official guide on like sentence correction, like a specific question, right? Let's say question 24 or whatever. And let's say I missed that question, so I did that question wrongly, and I take that question again, maybe in like a month, or a very similar question, and I make a very similar mistake, then I would have to go and reflect that my error log is not working very well because I'm making the same mistake. So take whatever time you need to not make those same mistakes. There is no magical number of hours. Like if you study 4 hours a day, you will be sorted. I don't think there is, but Olga, what do you think?
Yeah, I think really you need to understand, as I said, whether you are a person who can deep dive into preparation, leave all the private life outside, you know. If this is possible, then really allocate all your free time. In terms of hours, I think I had around, it sounds really awful, 200 hours of preparation over 3 months.
Yeah.
I don't know whether like mental capacity of everyone affords this. So really take all your own variables into consideration. If you can do it, allocate all your free time, really go and make it, fast, quick, and dirty, and then it's behind, it's done. If you feel that you're not that type of person, then spread it in a way which is acceptable for you, works perfectly with your work schedule. If you're currently having a very stressful time at work, really maybe it's not the best time to rush into taking a test. So be yourself.
Awesome. I promise you this is the last question, right?
All right.
So how do you know when a question is difficult enough to give up and move on with the test? I have my own thoughts, but go ahead.
Yeah, I see. The Gmat Club is answering, ideally you don't want to plan. Yes, that ideally you don't want to plan, but for many of us, this is the case.
Yeah, life is not ideal. That is
life is not ideal. So what's just, first take quant. What is the category of questions which is really hard for you? For me, always a total mess was the combination of linear of algebra or let's say equations was really, really bad, especially if it is a data sufficiency question. So as soon as I saw data sufficiency plus an equation or inequalities, oh my God, I'm just skipping that. I was really ready for that. And, believe it or not, I really had a couple of questions of this category. I just skipped them with the cold heart. Same applies to the verbal part. If you see you're constantly taking some question wrong and you take 4 minutes and still you have a wrong answer, this is the best candidate to skip. And you will see this pattern. If you analyze your preparation and test results, you will see this pattern, and just have those guys ready to, be ready to skip this. Maybe you will not need it even, but it's better just to use this tool instead of thinking, okay, whether I need to skip this now or maybe not. Just know the enemies.
Yeah. No, I agree. You mentioned 4 minutes. That's a good ballpark for me. So for quant, this is what I used to do. Like, let's say you're taking a long time, right? So are you going anywhere, right? Are you going in a positive direction? Like, for example, let's say you're trying to multiply two numbers and it's taking longer, but you know that if you are able to multiply, you're done. You have that question right. Don't skip then, because you're getting somewhere. But if you constantly think, if you're feeling like you have to go back to the question again, you don't really understand what's going on, and it's past 2 minutes, 3 minutes, then just move on, right? So it's not about, in my opinion, it's not about the specific time, like after 4 minutes I will move on, or after 3 minutes I'll move on. But it's more about where you are within that 2 minute or the 3 minute. And for verbal, I think this was my biggest issue. I would often have I'd be confused between two answers, right? So I would narrow it down to two options, and then I would spend forever with those two options. But at some point, I would guess and move on.
Absolutely. May I add up on this? I think guessing skill is crucial at this point of time when you arrive to Q48 or Q47. I made use of this. I guessed I think 3 or 4 questions at least, most of them correctly. Just to introduce a big example with this, with the proportions, I learned that when you solve this proportion things, there are always people who will say, okay, maybe it's like a proportion of women is 1/3, proportion of men is 2/3, and many people really get into this trap, and they mix up in the last minute what was the actual question. Was it about women or men? So you will always see answers adding up to 1/3 and 2/3.
Yeah.
This must be this. The right answer is 1 here. Was so amazing. This really worked during the test.
No, this is absolutely a really, really good strategy. You would often have that, and you would often have like -13 or +13, or like the answer is like one of those. But I'm glad you sort of picked some of that as well. Well, we are totally out of time, but BB is saying that we are giving him a hard time by disagreeing with him, but he's also saying a good answer. So thanks, BB, for moderating the chat. Well, thank you so much, Olga, for being here. And this was great. We learned a lot from your background. I want to wish you all the best for applications. And the worst part of the whole GMAT MBA thing was submitting the application and just waiting, right? So that was the worst, because everything's out of your control. So that's a hard phase that's just coming to you. So I hope you face that well. The GMAT Club forum is always around if you have questions. Just for the viewers, like the video if you want others to see it too. Subscribe to the channel. We'll keep having videos like these. And also, GMAT Club is doing MBA Spotlight. I think, Olga, might be useful for you too, where we are hosting top 20 MBA programs between June 15 to June 20. So register for that. All links in the GMAT Club forum. I'll link one in the comments after the video is done processing. Well, Olga, any last thoughts for everybody here?
Everyone is capable to score any score he wishes.
Right.
I think everybody is just, guys, you be yourself and enjoy your preparation time. I'm really getting nostalgic already about the preparation time, so enjoy. You're actually having a good time now.
Yeah. Victor is saying his GMAT is on Tuesday. All the best, Victor. I think you'll be just fine. Just make sure you eat well, you are well rested, and everything else. I'm sure you're well prepped for this. Well, thank you so much, Olga. I will see you soon, and please keep me posted with how things go with your applications.
Thank you guys very much.
Thank
Goodbye.